Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Ask the Theologian. I'm Randy Wed, and I'm glad that you are here as we take your biblical, theological, and worldview questions. And we are not lethargic, calm, placid, imperturbable, unflappable, unshakable, unexcitable, hypo-dispensationalists. We're the kind of dispensationalists that read the Bible and take it for its face value and go with it. Welcome to the club. Glad you're here today. Tonight, we start 1 John. I'm looking forward to that. I think I got a little graphic here. You know, I probably should put that up as a little advertisement, if it'll come up. There we go. So there it is, 1 John. Tonight at, what is it, about 6 p.m. Mountain Time, after we're done eating the spaghetti. We'll come into the auditorium. We'll be ready for Bible study. You'll join us. If you'd like to come for spaghetti, come join us about 6 o'clock. We'll look forward to it. And now, ready to, I think I can get everything all up there and be ready to go. And let's take a look at your questions today. And let's start out. I'm going to start out with, now this is good. If I can make this happen. Let's see. I've got way too many computer windows open, and so I'm having a hard time. I think I can make this happen. Let's start out with
Avon calling.
Let's go to Avon, Illinois with James today. That was pretty good, wasn't it? I've been waiting for that opportunity. There we go. Let's go to Avon, Illinois, and start with James today. Daniel chapter 8 states that once the Medes join with Persia, Iran, the ram, then the goat will crush them like a whirlwind. Who are the Medes? Could they be the Kurds of today? Okay, it depends on how you take Daniel chapter 8. Let me go again into Daniel chapter 8, and this is where you've got this various vision that takes place, and it's the vision of a ram with two horns. And the two horns were high. One was higher than the other. The higher came up last, and the ram was pushing westward and northward and southward so that no beast might stand before him. Neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand, and he did according to his will, and he became great. That is, the ram became great. And I was considering, and behold, a he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth, and touched not the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. And he came unto the ram, which had two horns, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran into him in the fury of his power. I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler, that is anger, with choler against him, and smote the ram and brake his two horns, and there was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. Therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken. And it came up, the four notable ones, toward the four winds of heaven. And out of one of them came forth a little horn. Now, so here, James in Illinois asks this question about Daniel 8 and the Medes aligning with the Persians, and then the goat crushing them with force. Who are the Medes? Could they be the Kurds of today? As I mentioned right at the beginning, it's an interpretive question. And the reason it's an interpretive question is because you can take Daniel 8 as an already fulfilled prophecy. By the time you get later in Daniel, there's absolutely no way, I don't think, the responsible way anyway, that you can take the later in, say, Daniel chapter 11. You simply cannot take it as being fulfilled. As a matter of fact, even when you get into Daniel chapter 9 and you close out chapter 9 with the 490 weeks, that is a time period which, by and large, had not been fulfilled. None of it, obviously, had been fulfilled when Daniel was speaking. Let's use the Daniel 9 passage as an example and then come back to Daniel 8. So let's go to Daniel chapter 9, beginning in verse 24, where he says, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people. Now, this was obviously completely future, 70 weeks. However, today, only 1 week is future. So you can take a partial preterist position. I don't even like the term because partial preterists, it tends to do more with that which is supposed to be future, like the book of Revelation, and they take it as having been fulfilled, and I think it's an untenable idea there. But in the truest sense of the meaning, let's put the preterist theology beside. In the truest sense of the meaning of preterist, it's fulfilled. You can take a partial preterist, and I think have to take a partial preterist view of Daniel chapter 9, beginning in verse 24, because there's these 70 weeks determined. These 70 weeks, he says in verse 25, that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem. Well, that has been fulfilled. That came forth, we believe, with Cyrus of Persia, who gave forth the command to restore and build Jerusalem. From that point unto Messiah the Prince, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. Now let's add those together, and you have 69 weeks. And, the wall's going to be built. Everything's going to be done. They're going to be living in Jerusalem. And after the 69 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off. Now, again, we're not looking for any kind of future fulfillment in any of that 69 weeks because it's already been fulfilled. Now, here's my point. If 69 weeks of Daniel chapter 9, verses 24, 25, 26 have already been fulfilled, then could we back up to Daniel chapter 8 and also say that this can be fulfilled? That is to say, we're not really looking for who are the Medes because that part has already been fulfilled. And so rather, Daniel chapter 8 becomes then a prophecy not about the end times, but it becomes a prophecy about what is happening from Daniel's day forward, and it's one of the fulfilled prophecies. So then the ram is the Medes and the Persians coming together. And if we look into the past, we know who the Medes are. The Medes were the Median Empire. And we could go to, locations and kings and all that kind of stuff. And we could see how they came together with the Persians. The Persians were the stronger half of that, thus the larger horn. Or the Persians in the previous chapter, I believe it's chapter 4, or is it chapter 2, that talks about the lopsided bear. That would be the Medes and the Persians. Again, shows this two-sided thing, one side being stronger. The Persians were always stronger. And then the ram becomes Alexander the Great with his conspicuous horn, one strong and solid kingdom. And then that broke into the four generals that eventually took what was left of that singular horn, singular power, broke into those four generals. And from that, let's continue, because you do get into some of this that has to be future. So again, let's pick up about verse 7, Daniel chapter 8. I saw him close unto the ram. Let's assume that this he-goat, is Alexander the Great. Close into the ram, the Medes and Persians. He was moved with choler against him. Alexander the Great moved with choler against the Medes and the Persians. smote the Medes and the Persians, brake his two horns. There was no power unto the ram to stand before him, but he cast him to the ground and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. So if we take that as Alexander the Great, then it's done. They don't exist anymore. There are no future Medes, so to speak. But we continue. Therefore, the he-goat waxed very great. That would fit Alexander the Great. And when he was strong, the great horn was broken up. When he was strong, remember Alexander the Great died at the zenith of his power at only 33 years of age. And I suppose I've tried to listen to an audiobook on Alexander the Great, but it was kind of boring. And I think usually when something is boring, it typically means we don't have the prerequisite information. So it seemed boring to me because there were a lot of names and places and battles and things that I didn't know about. And therefore, when you get, let's say 60% of the information is sort of a fog to you, you don't really know about it, then what we say is, well, that's boring information. He didn't present Alexander the Great very well. What boring means is, I don't know enough information to be able to stick with it. But anyway, I do know, this is kind of common knowledge, that Alexander the Great died, and perhaps there has never been a more successful warrior in the history of the world. Obviously, someone would contest that, but he died in his strength at some about 33 years of age, if I'm not mistaken, in Babylon. When he was strong, the great horn was broken, for it came up 4 notable ones toward the wind of heaven. Again, the Seleucids, the Ptolemaic kingdoms are the 2 most prominent of those 4. And out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceeding great toward the south, toward the east, toward the pleasant land. Now, this is what is where it becomes problematic all through the book of Daniel, is that little horn that comes out of the 4 horns, that's the Antichrist. I don't know. I think it would be hard to take verse 9 in a preterist way. So you get to a partial preterism. And it's an arguable. I mean, I can hear somebody sitting back there now saying, nah, wait a minute. You're not convincing me. You're telling me that, verses 1 through 8 have already been fulfilled, but suddenly verse 9 is not fulfilled. And verse 9 with the Antichrist comes, and this little horn waxed great even to the host of heaven. And you say, it looks to me like if verse 9 is not fulfilled, then verse 8 and verse 7 and verse 6, and none of it's fulfilled, and you're beginning, and you look for something future, like who could the Medes be? Could they be the Persians? That none of this ram and he-goat thing have been fulfilled. Now, it is a logical argument. It's a valid argument to say, are you really sure that you can say 1 through 8 is fulfilled and verse 9 is not fulfilled? Verse 9, 10 are still yet future? Now, the one thing going for that argument is that there are a lot of places in the scripture, in prophetic scripture, that you can find without doubt, and we could go to them and say, yes, all of this has been fulfilled, until we have this very sharp line, and then it's future. And so it was fulfilled, 2,000, 2,500, 3,000 years ago, and then it just stopped and went to future. And there is that aspect in prophecy in which the fulfilled is bumped right up to the unfulfilled, and there's absolutely no gap when there might actually be 2,500 years or more difference in that. And that is a pattern which I think would be undeniable. And someday it would be fun to say, hey, let's see if we can figure out that pattern. Or, let's see if we can pull together all the passages in which there is that kind of gap. Now, we who are not lethargic, calm, placid, imperturbable, unflappable, unshakable, unexcitable, hypo-dispensationalists, we don't have a problem with that because we rightly divide. And so we understand that these things are here and we have to study to show ourselves approved on where to cut that, where to make that division. I think I would go ahead and make the division here between verses 8 and 9, and I would divide this. And I would say previously is fulfilled, verses 9 and 10 are not fulfilled. But that said, I don't want to say that Avon, Illinois is wrong, because I think you could build a case to say, wait a minute, this kind of hypo-dispensationalist stance needs to be questioned. We need to question the assumptions. And so could you make an argument that all of the ram and the he-goat is yet future? It would be worth doing the exercise and seeing if that exercise could come about. I think you got a lot going against it, but maybe it's a lot of tradition going against it. So who cares if you got a lot going against it? And you could, I'm just, a number of comments here from James in Avon. Ding dong. If the Medes are the Kurds, which is what I believe, then the guy in Turkey, is bombing the northern front of Syria and Iraq. Could they be forced to align or to join with Iran in the near future? Daniel tells us that once the Iran, Persia, and the Kurds Medes align, the Kurds will be forced down to the Uli River in the province of Elam by Shusha. See, obviously, now James has studied this because that's where it gets into the, I don't know the geography and I don't know some of those things very well. And could Turkey, not Alexander the Great, be the goat? And the Persian, the Median, whoever the Medes are, but the Media Persia influence, could Turkey come and wipe that out? I think there is a reason to carry to have the speculation. Now again, could you convince me? Maybe you could. To stand before the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you got a lot to go on. Should we who are not lethargic, calm, placid, imperturbable, unflappable, unshakable, unexcitable, hypo-dispensationalists, should we be open to such an idea? Yeah, I think so. Because all of that means is we question the assumptions. We're not just lethargic dispensationalists. We're the kind of dispensationalists that are going to say, somebody has brought forth a new idea. Should we look into it? Now, with that, I'll add one more thing, and that is that there is at least there has been presented. I sometimes question the assumption on this. There has been presented the idea that there is double application to prophecy. It happened with Alexander the Great, and it will happen again in the last days. I sometimes think that thing is overstated, that argument is used too much. But you can make the argument in a decent place. I notice Michael says, you did that unflappable spiel. Very good. Methinks it was well practiced. Well, Nathan yesterday printed it out for me. And so I have it hanging right there below the camera so that I'm able to do that. Thanks to Deb in the Ozarks for putting all that together. We were talking yesterday about hyper-dispensationalist, and I said, maybe we should just own it. Because wouldn't you rather be hyper than lethargic, calm, placid, imperturbable? Imperturbable, that's the one I need to practice on. Imperturbable, unflappable, unshakable, unexcitable, hypo-dispensationalist? Yeah, I think so. Let's go to Terry in London. Good to see you. Greetings to you. I started to say top of the morning to you, but it's evening over there. It's about supper time. Are you having some bangers and mash tonight? That's what we're wondering. Or some shepherd's pie. That's the only thing I really know. That's what the English eat is shepherd's pie. Which best I can tell is like Americans might have meatloaf and mashed potatoes. Although meatloaf has kind of gone out. Nathan, have you ever eaten meatloaf?
I think once.
He says he's had meatloaf once. White privilege. What about y'all? Do you eat meatloaf?
We eat meatloaf.
Ah, okay. Wisconsin's meatloaf. So some people do meatloaf. Shelley doesn't like meatloaf, so we don't do meatloaf much. But shepherd's pie to me is like the leftover meatloaf and then leftover mashed potatoes, and you just dump it together and stir it up and stick it in the oven and put cheese on it. Am I right there that that's what shepherd's pie is? I'm perhaps just offended my entire UK audience with all of that. But anyway, we do have a question that comes from London, so I'm going to get back to the question, Terry. Greetings from London. Is it possible to have one session again on Galatians with color coding of verses, which will also help all of us to refresh Galatians again, which you completed? You know, I think that is that's a very good idea. You know, when I did Galatians, remember, I did Galatians slowly, then I went back and did Galatians a little more big picture, and then I went back and did a one sermon on Galatians. What would be interesting now, because Charles the Instigator had not instigated yet, I was not, this was, would you call it PC or PI? Pre-Charles or pre-instigation? Rather than let Galatians wait like forever until I work through all the other Pauline works, since I've already done that, and to give that refresher, I think that's a good idea. A Galatians in one sermon with color coding. Now, you know that last time I did that, the Galatians in one sermon, I think was, an hour and 15-minute sermon or something like that, maybe an hour and a half. I tell you what we should do, it would just because it would be fun, is to do like a Friday night, 2 or 3 hour, bring popcorn, kind of have a nice session and go through all that. I love your idea, Terry. I am going to contemplate your wonderful idea. Jerry says, I'm jealous that you haven't a song for us Georgia folks. Next time we ask, maybe you could pick one for us. And I do think that Georgia needs a song. Let's see. Come on.
Our latest single.
There we go. That's all I have to play right there. We don't even need words. And everybody already knows that song, right? Do you youngsters know the song?
No.
Nathan does. He's a little more cultured. Well, he's a few years older than Madison too. Check out the Devil Went Down to Georgia. Thanks. And let's see here if I can just while I've got it here, I should I should put it in my bookmarks. Well, maybe I could get a something a little nicer than The Devil Went Down to Georgia. But I don't see Deb. She had the same thought. Devil went down to Georgia. But Paul, he's from Wisconsin. They're nicer up there. They go for, Georgia on my mind. Nancy went for the devil, went down to Georgia as well. Maybe we should do a little poll. You should get polls set up on Worshipify so we can do that. Okay, I got to get with the questions here. Our question, we will get now to that rifleman question of the day, coming from Russell today, who perhaps is having some shepherd's pie for supper. And he has a question from Numbers chapter 23, verse 21. And he says, at this point, Israel has worshipped golden calves, taken wives from the Midianites, worshipped other gods, provoked God about 10 times, almost stoned Moses and Aaron, have wanted to go back to Egypt. That's a nice list you put together. Yet God says he hath not beheld iniquity in Jacob, neither hath he seen perverseness in Israel. How do we put this together? Numbers chapter 23, 21. Let's go ahead and pull up that passage of Scripture and see if we can put that together. He hath not beheld iniquity in Jacob, neither hath he seen perverseness in Israel. The Lord his God is with him, and the shout of a king is among them. Now, this is, you notice just the way the words are laid out when it's not in paragraph form. That tells us that it is poetry. It's Hebrew poetry. I think much, if not all, I would need to go through and verify before I could say all, because it's a hypothesis. Much, if not all, Hebrew poetry is actually prophetic, and being prophetic, perhaps this is actually talking about the last days and giving us a word that God is going to restore Israel in her righteousness. Now, let's go to the beginning of this particular song. Is this, which song is this? Rise Up, Balak. Okay, so interesting. Balak said unto him, what hath the Lord spoken? Now, this might color my my thinking here just a little bit. I think the Jewish people tell us there are 7, but maybe it's 10 songs in the Bible. I wonder if they count this one. I don't know. The greatest is the Song of Songs, the Song of Solomon. But we won't spend the time to check. Do they say there's 7? Do they say there's 10? And is this one? If I were doing a further study on this, I would definitely look that up. But here's the other possibility we could check into here. Remember that Balak is a fake prophet. Prophet for hire, a hireling, kind of like a lot of preachers. And Balak is speaking. He took up his parable and he said, rise up, Balak, to hear, hearken unto me. God is not a man that he should lie, neither the son of man that he should repent. And going on, behold, I have received commandment to bless, and he has blessed. I cannot reverse it. Is this how would we say? Is this Balak's view of the way God views Israel? Or is it inspired? Is it truly giving God's view? I kind of think like, I don't know, if for those of you who have little kids or something like that, especially when they get, I don't know, they're 8, 9 years old or whatever, and you might look at your kid over there, as he's behaving not in the kindest way, and you might say, "My kid is a brat." But if someone else comes and says, "Your kid is a brat," boom, I'm taking you out right here and now. Could this be that this is the revelation of God as God is looking at Jacob when, if you're talking, about your child to someone else, my child is an angel. Since it comes from Balak, I'm a little torn on which way to go here. And one of the reasons I say that is because, you can read some things in Job from Job's 3 friends, and they sound kind of suspicious at the beginning. And then you realize, well, look whose mouth is moving. This is from Eliphaz or Bildad or the other friend, and so we don't take their word. So could that have influenced it here? So the other thing is, I'm circling the plane here. The other thing is that Balaam and Balak, as we've got here, this is, did I get that wrong? Balaam is speaking, Balak is the king. That Balaam gives prophecy that is accurate. I see him not near, but far, a star coming out of Judah. So I think I would lean towards, as I'm carrying this out and trying to put it together, I think I would lean towards there is prophecy here, and that prophecy should influence the look. So I would want to go and say, okay, first of all, I want to know what is the Old Testament use of parable. He took up his parable. I know in the New Testament that parable is always about the kingdom. Is that true in the Old Testament? I don't know how many parables we have in the Old Testament. Let's take the particular word here just to see here that word. Okay, so parable comes up quite a few times, as you can see, 40 times in the Old Testament. So sometimes proverb is translated. So in fact, this chapter is the first time we've seen it. In fact, verse 7 is the first time. Parable. I would, a lot right there in Numbers 23 and 24. What have you got? 8 or 10 times there without counting that it uses parable. So what's that word? What's it mean? Does that point me to prophecy? Or what do I need to do with that? That's the kind of thing I need to work through. So I would say that this is one of those things. In order to bring that, you're asking the exact right question. Wait a minute. Is no iniquity in Jacob? Have you had blindfolds on? What's up with this? And so I think I would keep asking that question, and I would carry that through. Then, why is it saying there's no iniquity when there is iniquity? Does it have something to do with parable? Is parable a proverb? Is it speaking of the last days as Balaam has done in other places? Is it speaking of Israel's ultimate status? As Balaam again does in other places. What's up with that? I would lean towards, if I was guessing today, I would say, okay, it has to do with prophecy. And I would tie it into the end times. But perhaps I could be wrong on it. Perhaps. My apologies. To Joel in Grand Rapids, Bible doctrines to live by. Meatloaf is my favorite cut of beef. uh, yeah, you go to the butcher and you'd say, I'd like a pound of the meatloaf there. My favorite cut of beef or pork. I didn't know you could do meatloaf with pork. I don't think I've ever. Maybe it's more of a. I don't know. Do we call people from Wisconsin and Michigan Yankees? I think we do. Do you consider yourself a Yankee or I don't know what we call Midwesterners, if we call them Yankees or not. But maybe it's a Midwestern thing. Maybe up there. Maybe it's because you have so many dairy cows and you keep them longer, and by the time you eat them, they're not any good, and so you have to make meatloaf out of it. I'm just not sure. Randy, help me, Randy. Not Alabama, right? His wife cooks a wonderful meatloaf, and got the recipe here. Interesting. Well, thank you for all that. Let's get back to the questions. Let's go to the Wadester. Good to see you today. Right Divider in Tennessee. Glad to have you. And Calvinists love to claim Romans 14, verse 23, and Hebrews 11:6 to propagate total depravity, in that one must be regenerated and gifted and gifted in faith before. Now I got to find the rest of the question. Nathan, find me that question, the rest of that question there on YouTube, and I'll get it. I think I know where we're going. And while he finds me the rest of the question, I'm going to go to Romans chapter 14, verse 23. And he that doubteth is damned if he eat, because he eateth not of faith. For whatsoever is not of faith is sin. Now, with that, again, the doctrine of total depravity is a Calvinist doctrine that they need in order to carry out the rest of their doctrine, which says God has to choose you because you're so totally depraved you would never choose him. Whatsoever is not of faith is sin. Yeah, so one must be, the Wadester says, one must be regenerated and gifted faith before they can do anything but sin. Would you elaborate a bit on this and share your thoughts? Okay, that's where I thought we were going to go with that. Thank you very much. So with this, so the Calvinists would come, okay, whatsoever is not of faith is sin. There's a lost person out there. That lost person is not of faith. I mean, if they had faith in the Lord Jesus Christ, they would not be lost, right? And because they're saved by grace through faith, not of works, so they would be a saved person. And yet they cannot even eat something without, damning themselves. He that doubteth is damned if he eat, because he eateth not of faith. Now, let's look to, as we add to that Calvinist argument there, Hebrews chapter 11, verse 6, but without faith it is impossible to please him. For he that cometh to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. Now, let's start with the Hebrews passage. That one's a little bit easier. Without faith, it's impossible to please him. I think, yes, we would say that is very true. Without faith, it's impossible to please him. And to come to God, you have to believe that he is. It's pretty simple, isn't it? You have to believe God exists, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. Now, let me just put up one little footnote here, in that I would not use Hebrews 11:6 in a evangelistic way. You get some works there, that a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. But nonetheless, whether it's a rewarder of him that receive the gift, or a rewarder of him that diligently seek, So one Pauline, one in not a non-Pauline context. We'll go with the concept anyway. So you have to believe God is. You have to believe that God. If I can paraphrase that God is going to receive you. If you come unto Him, God is going to receive you. Otherwise, you wouldn't. I've got some things to say to Joe Biden, but I'm not bothering to pack my bags and make the trip because he would not receive me. I wouldn't. It'd be a wasted trip. So that's therefore I don't even pack the bags. I don't even go. So yeah, there's got to be some degree of faith. Now, does the Calvinist position that you can't have faith unless God gives it to you, does that follow from here? That's where I would disagree. I would say that faith is, I don't want to overstate my case here. We spiritualize faith. We have faith in a lot of stuff. You go fly somewhere. Sorry for those of you who have to do that, but you go fly somewhere. You have some faith that the airline's pilots aren't going to call in sick, and your flight's going to be there, and your flight's going to be on time, and you're generally within the week. The flight's going to be on time, and it's going to go in the air, and you're going to fly across, and they're going to give you peanuts, and you're going to land, and you're going to be on the other end, and everything's going to be fine. It's a degree of faith we have. You don't have to be saved to have that kind of faith. In fact, if you do that, you probably question your salvation. But nonetheless, you don't have to be saved to get on the plane. It's a matter of faith. We make faith to be this sort of purely spiritual kind of thing that God must give you, when everybody has some degree of faith in something. And I mean, even this statement right here, he that cometh to God must believe that he is. Total depravity says you cannot believe that God even exists. You could not do that on your own. And yet all the world over, people believe that there is a God. They have this kind of faith. To take this Romans passage and make it about salvation, he that doubteth is damned if he eats, because he eateth not of faith, for whatsoever is not of faith is sin. First of all, damned, the word here, it's translated here as in condemned. There is judgment upon. And even if you look in a Webster's 1828, or if you look in the Oxford English Dictionary, the word damned in 1611 and into the 1800s, it did not mean sent to hell. So the Calvinist wants to take these kind of things, and they want to make this verse, Romans chapter 14, verse 23, to be about salvation. You know why? Because they make every passage to be about salvation. Why do they make every passage to be about salvation? Because they're covenant theologians, and covenant theologians have to make that. It's in the recipe. It's the rule book. Because of the fake covenants, and they are fake, they made them up. You cannot read them in the Bible. The only place you can read covenant theology is in a Calvinist theologian's book, because it's totally unbiblical. If you could read about it in the Bible, we would read about it and we would say, okay, I accept it. But they have this covenant of works, covenant of grace that God has made sometime when God had his covenant meeting, prior to someday when he did all this, and they came together and they argue about what order did they do. That's the most ridiculous article here. I have here 3 panda bears right in front of me. One panda bear is purple, one panda bear is pink, one panda bear is blue. Which order are they in? And then they argue about which order these fake panda bears that don't even exist are in. What an utterly ridiculous idea. Honestly, I think all of theology should laugh and scorn at covenant theology. It is absolutely, totally, 100% made up. And I'll take on Al Mohler on that. He can't show me anything in the Bible that shows that there are these fake covenants, these panda bears, and what order these panda bears are in. Al Mohler's smoking something. He made it up. And R.C. Sproul and John MacArthur and all these other guys. Now, so then they make this thing up. Now they've got this totally made up theology. And then with the totally made up theology, they continue to make up theology. Okay, God has decided to save some people. We made that up. Now, how did God decide to save some people? Well, he decided that it was going to be completely his decision. And so in being completely his decision, then, then naturally, then, they've got to have God's decision revealed unto them before they're going to be able to see it. And what they're saying is, God made 3 panda bears, blue, pink, and purple. He put them in this particular order. No, in that order. No, in this order. No, in that order. No, it's this order. No, okay. So I'm going to go with this order. And then you don't see the panda bear until God reveals it to you. This is my theology. That is Calvinist theology. It is utterly make-believe. Make-believe. And that's why I'm not scared to call Calvinism heresy, because it is. It's a fake God. It's not the God of the Bible. It's built upon only proof texts and theology books. And I don't have any place for it. I wouldn't let a Calvinist teach in my church. I wouldn't go to a Calvinist church. I wouldn't sit through all that. They get here, he that doubteth is damned if he eats. And they make this to be a proof text for total depravity. It says to me, you're stretching to make the Bible fit your Calvinist theology, your make-believe theology. And carries that there. Now, if we are talking about meatloaf, okay, maybe so. Damned if he eats, because he eateth not of faith. It's when you take these passages like Hebrews 11:6 and Romans 14:23 and see them in their context for what they are worth, it really does become laughable that these are used to prove what they are trying to prove in that. Just amazing. Now we go down to San Antonio, to the Padre of Old San Antone, and Manny has a question about Sheol and the series I did a while back. It has been a while, several years ago, isn't it? Anyway, part 2. I think it's just a 2-part of that, but part 2, 2016. He says you quoted Ephesians 4:8 that Jesus took those in Abraham's bosom to heaven. Do you still hold to that view? He also quoted Luke 16:19. That's the parable, and how important it is, whether or not it's a parable or not. Do you still hold that view? Okay. Excellent. We do change our views from time to time, and the reason is we're not lethargic, calm, placid, imperturbable, unflappable, unshakable, unexcitable, hypodispensationalists. We are students of the word, studying to show ourselves approved. So sometimes we take a position, and then later on we gain a little insight, understanding through our study, not through, God has just revealed to me, but through further study, and we say, I think I had that wrong. And sometimes, and this happens a lot of times, we said something that seemed right at the time. Later on, we'll say something that seems right at the time. And a good sharp ear, like the Padre of Old San Antone, will say, you said this and you said this. One of these things is not like the other. He said these two don't go together. And the preacher gets caught. Now, that's not exactly what Manny did, but actually I I appreciate those who listen sharply like that because it helps me in developing my teaching. It helps me in developing my theology and all that because you do, I mean, all of us do that. That's why it is so easy to find a politician that flip-flopped. Because you're in one audience in one setting and you say one thing, and you're in a different audience, a different setting, at a different time and place, you say another thing, and then it becomes sort of this gotcha thing. I'm not huge on for politicians using the gotcha thing. And that is because I do understand that circumstances change and different, there's a different time and place and all that kind of stuff. And because, they'll use it on me someday too. But I think that when those happen, whether it's a politician or a preacher, the politician or the preacher should be able to say, okay, let me tell you why these things that appear to be incompatible are compatible, or let me just say, I was wrong then, I'm right now, I'm wrong, whatever it is. We ought to be called to make a defense of that. Now, here, I haven't necessarily said anything of recent that has gone opposed to that, but Manny knows that I've said some things that go against that. Let's take Ephesians chapter 4, verse 8, wherefore he saith, when he ascended up on high, he led captivity captive and gave gifts unto men. Now, I probably did say in 2016 that this is when the Lord took those in Abraham's bosom to heaven, emptied out Sheol, if you will. I am not convinced of that today. You again could build somewhat of a decent argument, but it's got some leaks in it. It's got some holes in it. It is possible rather to keep them in Abraham's bosom, unto this day. Now that has some holes into it also, but to keep them there and have them be raised when Israel is raised again. Now, you could also say, okay, just their souls, which is all that's in Abraham's bosom anyway, their souls were taken onto heaven and Abraham's bosom again has been emptied out. A number of different ways you can go, but I probably would not say it at least as strongly. Now, if I was absolutely studying just that topic, maybe I'm sure I would deal with that and come to it and maybe come to the same conclusions, but I wouldn't be surprised if I haven't changed just a little bit in that regard on whether or not Abraham's bosom is occupied today. Now, on Luke 16, verse 19, and this is the rich man and Lazarus, the parable here that begins in 16:19, and most of us know the parable. I said, I probably did because it sounds a bit familiar, though 2016 was a world away. I said, okay, is this a parable or is this not a parable? I do think that is still an important interpretive issue on this. And I don't think it's a parable. Bullinger does think it's a parable. I totally disagree with Bullinger's interpretation on Luke chapter 19. Chapter 16, verse 19. He thinks it's a parable. He has to put it as a parable because he believed in soul sleep, and that the story didn't fit soul sleep, and so he has Jesus sort of telling this accommodation story. I think his argument is totally untenable. I think it's the worst argument he's got in the Companion Bible. What's he say here? Left side of your screen. This commences the second part of the Lord's address to the Pharisees against their tradition of making void God's word as to the dead, which may be seen in all these passages. It is not called a parable because it cites a notable example of the Pharisees' tradition, which had been brought from Babylon. See many other examples in Lightfoot. Their teaching has no structure. See 2 above. Okay. it's a parable. It's not called a parable. It's an example of bad Pharisaical teaching, is what he says. The Dr. Bullinger, with all due respect, and I know you come from Kent, England, it's one of our favorite places, but really, the plain sense is that Jesus stated this as something that happened. And you have not convinced me not to reject the plain sense. The plain sense makes common sense. You have got a tradition that you're not willing to sacrifice. And so you're going to blame it on the Pharisees having a tradition that they're not willing to sacrifice, because your tradition is contrary to that of the Pharisees. I think it's a real thing. Everything in there is given as, historic. You've got a name for this guy, and you've got, dressed in purple and fine linen and fared sumptuously every day. It just seems like a historic event to me. Now, the reason I think it is important on whether it's a parable or not a parable is because what do we do then with the teaching of that? If it's a parable, we take the moral of the story, so to speak, rather than the details of the story. If it's actually an event, then the details matter. That therein is where I think that's important. Jim, a song request for Sunday, The Solid Rock. Now, are we talking on Christ the solid rock I stand, all other ground is sinking sand? Help me remember that. The great singer Jim Reeves, who sings the Padre of Old San Antonio. Oh, excuse me, this is a different Jim Reeves, has requested The Solid Rock. We will put that in. Maybe even for this Sunday, because I don't know that I know we haven't practiced yet, so we'll check that out. 1 Peter 5:8. Is that for today? I assume that maybe it says you quoted, I assume this is in the Sheol topic, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. I'm only doing Pauline works in the green and blue. I would not build a doctrine on this. I would not today use that to say this is how the devil is operating today. The principle of it all, I think, would be okay. Because even if the devil is not roaring, walking about seeking whom he may devour today, if he's a little more on a leash than that, he's already set all the traps, so it doesn't really matter. It's kind of like, I don't know, Kit Carson, the great American frontiersman from Taos, New Mexico. When in his trapping days, he would go out and set the traps, and then he would go home and eat meatloaf for supper, and as he did that, his traps are being, what do you call it? What happens when he's catching his stuff? He's catching his stuff. So I think I would use 1 Peter 5:8 more in that kind of secondary manner, that, if I were doing green letters here, I'd put it in green. I wouldn't build a doctrine off this. I would say there's some truth that we can gain from it, and not fully change on all that. So my point is, I think that I would not really disagree with myself fully from my 2016 presentation. I might just refine it some. Thank you for that. Hey, Dr. Mike and Lorna, 43rd wedding anniversary today. Happy anniversary to you. 43 years ago up in Pittston, Pennsylvania. That's good. You making meatloaf? Is this how you celebrate the 43rd? What do you do to celebrate the 43rd? With your knight in shining armor, defender literally and figuratively. Mike deserves a medal. Well, make him some meatloaf on your 43rd anniversary. Paul, up in King, Wisconsin, while reading the Cambridge Ancient History, Volume 1, Part 2. This is how a person should live. I'll just stop right there. To say, I don't know how old Paul is, probably, 66. Lives in the King Veterans Home up in King, Wisconsin, and reading Cambridge Ancient History. The older I get, the more interesting that sounds to me. I suppose, had I been given the opportunity when I was, 15 or 25 or 35 or 45, I don't know that I would have done much. Today, that would be very interesting. So anyway, I came across the following statement. At Eridu, Kish, and Mari, if I pronounce that right, it would seem that previously the king must have resided in the temple. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so, sorry, I had to put a paragraph in here. So the ancient history is that it looks like the king resided in the temple at these various ancient places. Then Paul goes on, we know that the Antichrist will sit in the temple as God, claiming he is God. So according to this source, it's not unprecedented that a king acting as God king would reside in the temple, receiving worship from his subjects as their God king. And when prophets such as Ezekiel write that Messiah will dwell in the temple, such as Ezekiel 43:7, it's not surprising that the Jews during the tribulation would easily be deceived by the Antichrist. That is what an excellent historical example, because we do think, because we think so much local church, that it's kind of a weird thing to say, I live in the church, although our parsonage is attached to the church. Madison now lives in the church. I used to live in the church. Nathan used to live in the church. Literally, you open up the door and say, hi, everybody. This is my living room. This is but that is unusual for our setting today. Maybe next to the church, all that. So that's very interesting. Again, Eridu, Kish, Mari, hopefully I pronounced all that right in the Cambridge Ancient History volume, that the king resided in the temple. Furthermore, remember the baby, was it Josiah? Am I wrong there? I preached a sermon on it, I should remember. But the baby that was hidden in the temple for 7 years before he was made king, because his wicked grandma Athaliah, daughter of Jezebel, was wanting to kill him, and so the priest kept him in the temple. They must have had residential quarters. They didn't just keep him in the Holy of Holies. So, excellent point there. Deb up in Wisconsin, regarding La Palma volcano eruption, today's update, strong activity comes after uptick in earthquakes. What's going on there that we should be concerned about? This volcano, of course, in its explosion for the last few days, looking at the headlines here, La Palma Island braces for more quakes. La Palma volcano eruption, strong activity this morning. Volcanic activity worldwide. Okay. Here's the Wikipedia. San Miguel de la Palma. St. Michael of the Palms. Little island right there. Interesting stuff. Some nice pictures. I assume these are pre-volcano pictures. You can even find a red-billed cough. Is that how you say that? Cough? Nice looking bird. Should get some bird food for that deal. I think that I don't know that I put too much there. You know, the uptick in earthquakes. I'm not enough of a geologist to know here. It's not beyond my imagination to say military experimentation or military planning could be a part of that. Could they be doing some exercises out there that are therefore causing the earthquakes? Yeah, probably so. I know that geologists. I used to pastor several geologists, and I know that they do. Now this would be on a much smaller scale, but they do put explosives into the ground, even on the ocean floor, and all in a series over several miles, and they boom, and then they measure the shake, and then they use that to determine where is oil underneath. So could it be oil, an oil exploration that went awry? Maybe. Could it be a military exploration to say, how would we take out, let's say, the west coast of the United States if we wanted to do it? Could we cause volcanoes to go off? That's an interesting thing, and we used to be called conspiracy theorists when we would think like that. But countries of the world like China would much rather make it look like a natural disaster, hence COVID. And so, could the Chinese be doing some military exploration there, testing it out on this little island out there just to see how things work before they go to a bigger, better place? I wouldn't put it past. I think that that is worthy of checking out. I'm going to quit here in just a moment. Thank you, Charles. If you're going to color code Galatians, the instigator would like to meet and give you my 2 cents on how I would like to see this completed in book form. Well, we do need to sit down, don't we? And check that out. Nancy makes her meatloaf with half Italian sausage and half ground beef, but did not say what time dinner was. But she did ask, what about the graves being opened at Christ's resurrection? I have studied that even within the last couple of weeks, because I am and have, I've got one more sermon left in the 30 things, and I am and have and still am considering that might be the 30th. I'm not sure I have the full answer. When I get the full answer, it is going to be, it's going to be a sermon to see if we can take that. I tell you what, I want to give more time to it. Tomorrow, we're going to begin with Joel's question from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Why did God allow the Bible to be perverted? What say you, please? Joel was recently asked that and says, I think I know the answer, but I'd like to hear what you say. I would love to do that. But I want to give that a little more time. And since it's 10 after 11 already and the audience has to go get their meatloaf ready, and I've got to go get 1 John ready because, again, tonight we are doing 1 John verse by verse. We start tonight about 6 p.m. Mountain Time. So tomorrow we start with the Michigander question. and we're going to see, why did God allow the Bible to be perverted? And he did. The Bible is perverted, not the copy that we use, but there's perverted copies all out there, the majority of them. Let's start the day on Thursday with that question. How's that sound? Thanks, Joel, for the good question there, and thanks each one of you for being here today on Ask the Theologian. I appreciate it. And we are not lethargic, calm, placid, imperturbable, unflappable, unshakable, unexcitable, hypo-dispensationalists. No, we're hyper. We have some energy. We have some strength and muscle and a spine. We question the assumptions and read the Word and take it exactly as it is. And we do it with 18% snarkiness. Been happy to have you today. God bless.